In olden days, a glimpse of femur was only for morbid dreamers, but you're not alone. Bring anything bones. Two goofy gals with deathly interest go on a skeleton inquest in your headphones. Anything bones.
Hello and welcome to Anything Bones. I'm Sophie Schwartz.
And I'm Katelyn Hart. Welcome, you guys.
This is a joyous day for Bones. We have a new president-elect and
Yes.
we have a special guest. Seattle sketch and improv comedian and goodwill enthusiast and member of the Maple Daddies, Nicholas Kruger.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Do we know Biden's position on Bones yet?
I think I want to say he's pro-Bones.
Pro-Bone. Oh.
Well, I would think and he would be in support of anything that's like fact-based, and you know, he seems to like science, so maybe he'd like us. I don't know.
Quick counterpoint. He's against coronavirus. Does that make him anti-Bones?
Shit.
That begs the question, is coronavirus pro-Bones?
We're getting down the rabbit hole here.
Oh, man. All I know is that Biden is horny for science, and so am I.
Here.
And for those listeners that listen all the way to the end of the credits in our episode, you'll recognize Nick's name because he does our music for our intro and outro.
Yeah. I think it was so fun to do the little ditty for y'all.
Yeah, I love it. It's so spooky. I love how it trails off into the end, into a beautiful macabre oblivion.
You know, when I was sitting at my keyboard thinking, how do I write a song for a Bones thing / how do I alter a different song to make it about Bones? I thought, how do I make this needs to be more macabre. And I had 1,000 papers in a trash can which just said more macabre, but scratched through and crumpled up.
You were
How much eyeliner were you wearing when you wrote the music?
Raccoon levels.
You can rival me on the eyeliner stage.
No, I was trying to channel what would Sophie write? How would Sophie do a macabre song? And I was just like, the only way to get in Sophie's head is just to get that eyeliner on.
Did you also take some of my shoes?
Oh, yeah, I was so tall.
Have a hard time getting through doorways.
Yeah. Do our podcast listeners know the platform situation?
I am known in my circle of friends to wear large black platform boots, 4 to 7 inches tall. So Nick at a comfortable 6 feet, right, would be quite an intimidating presence.
Frankenstein-esque, I think is fair to say, which is on brand.
Yeah, keeping it on brand. Spooky all year round.
I'm nothing if not on brand.
I don't know why our friend group doesn't all have 7-inch platform boots to just really round out the group.
Here's my thinking. I would love for us to all choose a height, and then everyone gets different shoes so that we meet each other all in the middle at that same height.
Okay. But
Perfect.
Everybody has to have some kind of height on their boot, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah. Except for Darren, who has to be flat-footed.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're shooting for 7 feet?
Yeah. Darren, known to be 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
I like the idea of all of us having something that's matching, but not what you'd expect.
T-shirts are so blasé.
So
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah, we can be those Seattle eccentrics that you see walking through downtown. It's like, oh, it's that group of people that all is exactly the same height with different shoes.
Oh, man. I would love to be part of that gang.
Sign me up when COVID is over.
Yeah, wake me up when September ends and sign me up when COVID's over.
Thank you. Maybe the first Anything Bones merch will just be platform shoes.
Yeah, and they have Anything Bones on the sole, so
Perfect.
you see it while you're walking away.
While you're getting kicked. I'm sorry. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Just kidding.
Kick people in our good name.
I'm just gonna go out. Does anything Bones condone the kicking of other people with official merchandise?
Only Nazis
Only Nazis. Okay.
and racists.
Nazis and racist approved kicking.
Well, now that we've really gotten off topic, should we get into some bone material?
I think it's about that time.
Okay. Well, Nick, my name is Katelyn, and I'm going to be... Just kidding. I know, Nick. I'm going to be telling you about something that took place in Denmark in about March 2017, but is also going to take us back to World War II. So put on your seatbelt, okay?
I'm zipping up my flight suit.
Oh, good, because there is a plane involved. Okay, so we are in Denmark in March 2017, and 14-year-old Danish boy Daniel Christensen is studying World War II in class right now. And I guess for some kind of history class project, he decided to go with a metal detector and search around his family's farm, which is near Berkelsey in northern Denmark. I don't know if I said that right.
Beautiful place. I have no idea where that is.
No, I've never been. So sad. But I'd like to go because Daniel and his father Klaus found a World War II plane with the metal detector, and the pilot's body was still inside.
What?
Yes.
Oh, so I'm just imagining the little what's the kid's name?
Daniel.
Little Daniel and Father Klaus just walking along the beach, and they just bump up to it's like, oh, it's a little beep, and then the camera pans out, and there's a full bomber just sort of slightly in the sand or something. I don't know. Was this in the sand? I don't know.
Nope. It was on a farm.
You said that part. Listen.
Okay. It's okay. You're allowed to imagine it however you want, but I'm going to tell you it was on a farm.
On a farm. Great. Take out sand, put in dirt, fix it in the edit.
Papa, there is a plane underneath this cow.
How can you see that? I only see dirt as far as the eye can see. Massive plane. Pilot hanging out the window.
Papa, is he dead?
Yes, my boy. That's Klaus.
Super dead.
Yeah. So what they end up finding is the wreckage of a German World War II Messerschmitt plane buried in the field on their farm. Like I said, they went out with a metal detector. They were thinking that they would find just some old plates or just something cool for Daniel to show in school. But I'm going to just quote here. Oh, I should say my sources were an article from CNN, an article from Daily Mail UK, and then 2 articles from a Danish paper called The Local, which thankfully publishes their stuff in English. So I was able to read it.
Real good. Dude, you got a number on what that Messerschmitt was? I'm a big plane nerd, and I probably know what it is.
Oh, God. That's why I chose this story for you, because I knew you'd like this plane shit.
I was just going to say, Nick, you got some fun facts about this plane.
All it says here is that they believe it was a Messerschmitt fighter plane. Make your best guess, because I don't know.
It's probably 109. It's probably a 109.
109?
Do I have anything? I'm trying to think if I have anything to add interesting. 109. It was one of the first German fighters that was basically kicked everybody else's ass.
Why did it kick everybody's ass? What did it have that other planes did not?
It was one of the first successful monoplane fighters with a covered cockpit, with modern engine, and, all the other countries were basically using slightly upgraded biplanes. And the Germans were like, guess what? We got this fucking thing from the future.
Oh, shit.
And I'm going to crash it into fucking Denmark.
Oh.
Yeah, this one didn't go so well, but it's interesting. Okay, so Daniel and Klaus were interviewed for the CNN article, and Klaus said, quote, I hoped we might find some old plates or something for Daniel to show in school. At first, we were digging up a lot of dirt with metal fragments in it. Then we suddenly came across bones and pieces of clothes. It was like opening a book from yesterday.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine finding something like that.
No, it would be absolutely insane. And this kid is 14. Just keep that in mind.
I'm still like, I still can't get my head around, was it like completely buried in like the dirt?
Basically, yeah. So they think it crashed. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but they think it crashed in 1944 or 1945. And then it was found in 2017. And it sounds like this farm was just this huge place. And I'll tell you about it in a second. But basically, yeah, it was just underground for the most part.
That's wild.
Yeah. So Klaus said that, like I buried the lead a little bit. Klaus thought that the plane crashed around November or December 1944 because of what his grandfather had told him. I guess this property's been in the family for a really long time. And Grandpa told Klaus, who is Daniel's dad, that he recalled the plane crashing when he was making Christmas cookies with his family.
Meow.
Is that Santa?
No, it wasn't Santa, honey. That
No,
was a Messerschmitt.
Merry Christmas.
The Germans not come to give you presents, little Klaus.
So Grandpa said to Klaus that he thought the plane had been removed, but he also kind of didn't know for sure. So here's another quote from Klaus from the Daily Mail. Quote, "We had never seen anything on the surface." So like you were asking, there was nothing above the surface. Continuing that quote, "Not a single bit of metal. He was telling a lot of stories, my grandfather. Some of them were not true and some of them were true. But this one was true. Maybe I should have listened to him a bit more when he was alive."
Nick, my question is, so if that plane crashes into the ground, it probably makes a pretty big hole, right? Do you think they just covered it up and were like, we'll just bury this guy?
Yeah, well, like I'm no physicist, but yeah, plane go fast, make big hole. Maybe big hole in middle of field. Need plant in field cover up. Don't worry about it.
Sounds like a very Danish solution to me.
Yeah, that's just crazy because like planes, you know, they're not super like rigid. The Messerschmitts were mostly made out of aluminum. It's not going to be like, you know, and like stay in the ground unless, I mean, I don't know. Well, if the pilot was dead, then he probably had some sort of a crash landing.
Yeah,
So,
it definitely was a crash. I was going to say that too. It was definitely not just a plane gracefully landing on a farm and the pilot just dies there. No, like this was probably very violent.
Yeah, he gracefully glides it in. He makes it. I've done it. Heart attack. Dies.
No.
Oh, Messerschmitt.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know what accent this is, if it's German or Danish, but I like it, and I think we should keep trying it.
Yeah.
Keep failing at it.
I have no idea what a Danish accent is, but I'm just going to assume it's like a slightly Scandinavian German.
Yeah. Go with your gut on that one. So when the plane was found, they did order an explosive ordnance team out to the site to secure ammunition or other dangerous materials. But it doesn't seem like there was any concern with that after people had come out and done their investigation. They did find, along with the pilot's suit, hat, and 3 unused condoms, he had his wallet with 2 Danish coins and some food stamps for the canteen in the Aalborg base, Aalborg. And of course, they weren't quite sure who this was, but they were able to identify the pilot as Hans Wunderlich?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I mean, hey, if he was bringing condoms to Denmark, then you know he's licking good.
Hey.
You knew what he was doing.
Wunderlich was a nickname. Wink, wink.
Oh my God.
Yeah, are we sure this isn't just they didn't write his nickname down on the roster? Oh, Wunderlich, where are you going to today? I'm flying to Denmark. I'm going to get myself some Danish poon.
Danish poon sounds like a dessert they'd make on Great British Baking Show.
Well, this is a little less lighthearted. Hans was 19 years old when he died, and he was identified by his name in a logbook, and he also had his initials etched onto a watch that they found in the wreckage. They were able to pretty quickly identify the pilot. He was born in Neusorg, which is a small town in the state of Bavaria, north of Munich. He was born in 1925. According to German archives, the crash happened, I don't know how they know this exactly, on October 10th, 1944.
Oh, Germans, they write everything down.
I guess. They recorded that there was, quote, a deadly crash in marshy terrain. Excavation work was postponed since this was in vain, end quote. So I guess the pilot never showed up again and they just figured it had, or maybe they were able to locate with radar or something. I'm not exactly sure how they knew the exact day that this happened and that there was no point in going to excavate the plane.
Yeah, well, yeah, it sounds like, so like, first thing was like, okay, hold on, there were 13 planes earlier today. Now there are 12.
Yeah, something's wrong.
Also, and this may not have anything to do with that, but there was reports of a big crash in a marsh a little bit north of here. I don't know. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Yeah, crazy. So yeah, it sounds like super marshy, and then the plane just like sunk in, and they're just like, nope, fuck it, we got other shit to do. They're bombing us. We're not going to go dig this thing out.
The war was still going on, so how much time are you going to spend to go get this plane and this guy's remains, I guess? But yeah. So the Hohenbrunn City Hall officially records the pilot's death on March 5th, 1945. And by the time he's been identified, so we're flashing forward to 2017, by the time he's identified as the pilot, his parents are long dead. And he, Hans Wunderlich, was unmarried, no kids. He did have a sister, but she died in 2007, and she didn't have any children either. So because he didn't have any next of kin, they didn't have anybody to tell that his remains had been recovered. And the local paper, it's literally called The Local, thought that he was likely to be laid at rest at a war cemetery in Denmark.
So they didn't just give his remains to the kid?
Be like, hey, kid, you found this guy. Now it's your job to bury him.
What is this, like a fucked up finders keepers?
Right. Well, what was the kid's name again?
Daniel.
Well, Daniel, you found this recovered dead Nazi, and we've attempted to give him over to his next of kin, and because there are none alive, the next in line is you. Hand him the body.
Oh, God.
I mean, I remember when I was 14 and I buried my first Nazi.
You know, it's part of growing up.
So I'm going to end on a quote from The Local, which I found just delightful. This is from Klaus Christensen. That's dad of Daniel Christensen, who found the plane. Quote, "Luckily, my son has something to write about in his assignment now. He's actually been given the day off school today so that he can watch the police and bomb disposal people working. It's quite exciting for all of us." End quote.
Fuck yeah. I hope he does a good job writing his paper, because it would suck to get a B after all of that.
Like your day starts off so exciting. You find a long lost German plane, and then you're like, "Teacher, look what I found." She's like, "Oh, sweet. Now we're going to write a paper on it." And he's just like, "Ah, damn it." I should have told her.
Welcome to grown-up life, Daniel.
You fucked up.
Now bury this body. Yeah.
Bury this body. Here he is.
Here he is. Wow, that's amazing, Katelyn.
But yeah, that's kind of it. I just thought that was really cool. I thought that was right up Nick's alley with the planes and the metal detectors. I feel like that's something you would like to do.
Oh, when I was a kid, I got like this really crappy metal detector that was probably $10 or something. Couldn't find shit, but we went to the beach anyway. My dad humored me. We're just like walking around, not finding anything.
I
That's my metal detector.
I feel like that's a lot of people's metal detector stories. It's like, we got a metal detector. We were so excited. We metal detected and found nothing.
Yeah, it's in my closet somewhere.
And I haven't used it since.
Exactly. Thank you for the cool plane story. I love a cool plane story.
Yeah, vroom vroom in the sky.
Classic.
Do you have a fave plane from the time?
I mean, like, there's a lot of cool planes. I'm just okay. You ready for Nick's Plane Corner? Just a quick segment of anything Bones is gonna be Nick's Plane Corner.
Yeah, give us a tight 2 minutes.
Oh, tight 2 minutes. That seems too long for Nick's Plane Corner.
What about just a jingle for Nick's Plane Corner?
Just, vroom, 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 Nick's Plane Corner. So there's all sorts of cool planes. World War II is probably one of the best eras for cool planes. Everyone agrees. You got some cool planes. You got the P-51. It was the one that made all the bombers get safely to bomb the German people. We love that, I guess. Well, they're Nazis, so it's okay. Actually, the Me-109, which is probably the plane we're talking about, is a really cool-looking plane. Yeah, it's a Nazi plane, but God, they got some good lines on it. It makes you feel uncomfortable. What are some other cool planes? I don't know. That's Nick's Plane Corner.
Planes.
Got it in one.
Now back to anything Bones. Nick, do you have a story for us? Are you ready?
I do have a story. Let's keep it going on this fun theme about wars, because
Nice.
Where do bones come from? But wars, turns out. So I was thinking, like, what do I want to talk about on your podcast? And I got to thinking, man, you see all those movies of big battles and all these people are dying and Jon Snow is cutting people's heads off. And then it cuts to them like, oh, that was a hard battle. And you're thinking, like, what did they do with all those bones? There's a lot of people that Jon Snow cut the head off of people. So I started looking into it. What happened to all the dead people? And it turns out there's some good stuff on Greek and Roman battles and what they did, which is kind of interesting. And then throughout the Middle Ages, there's like not a ton because they were dark ages and they weren't great about writing stuff down, unlike the Germans. But once we get to the Napoleonic Wars, boom, we got historians doing a great job. And so we got a bunch of primary sources and interesting stuff. So I got 3 sources for this. I'm going to hold off on the last one because it's kind of a spoiler. We got ancientorigins.net. We also got some Wikipedia, I will say, in there, our favorite from Wikipedia. We also got historian Shannon Sellen, who had a great article about what they did. So what I want to talk about specifically is Waterloo. It's the biggest battle of the Napoleonic times. Might be wrong, but it was a pretty big one. Basically, 50,000 people were killed on a single day.
Oh, shit.
The Battle of Waterloo lasts one day. It's where Napoleon came across the Duke of Wellington of beef fame. Also the Prussians, and they came together. And a bunch of people died, and Napoleon lost, and the rest is history. Really quick, just on the importance of Waterloo, this Swedish historian Agnetha Fältskog wrote the following: "My at Waterloo, Napoleon did surrender. My destiny in quite a similar way. The history book on the shelf is always repeating itself. Waterloo, I was defeated. You won the war."
You know, it's really important to quote and cite significant scholars, and I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, and that was in a history contest in 1974 that she wrote that and won the big prize for history that day.
I bet she did.
Was it with ABBA?
Was that the research facility that she was working out of?
Yeah, the ABBA research facility in Stockholm.
The ABBA Center for Historical Advancement.
Just people in bell bottoms running all around with books.
Waterloo, carbon date this bone, won't you?
Ooh.
Well done. Anyway, so Waterloo. How the hell with the 50,000 bones? Not to mention horses, because man, they loved fighting with horses back then, let me tell you. So it turns out how they dealt with bodies after these large battles throughout the Napoleonic Wars. I'm sort of drawing several examples here. Depending on the size of the loss, the weather, and the capacities of the army and the local population, battlefield cleanup was all over the place. So like, if it was a particularly rough battle and both sides were beaten badly and the local population is like, shit, now there's a bunch of people here. What are we going to do with all this? And armies left. Then it's just like, well, now what? When they got a chance to, like the victorious army would try to bury their dead, but then oftentimes they would also burn the dead of the enemy soldiers that lost, like a little bit less respect there. Yeah, they were mainly disposed of by burning, mass graves, and also by scavengers. That's the meat of this. We're going to be talking scavengers today.
Oh, that's the meat of it, Nick? Is that what you had wanted to say?
I mean, there's a lot of meat to scavenge through, let me tell you.
Oh, Nicky.
For some reason, people in like the 1800s didn't give a shit about dead soldiers.
Oh.
So Battle of Waterloo happens, 50,000 people dead. Local peasants were hired to clean up the battlefield, supervised by medical staff, 1800s medical staff. So the Allied dead were buried in pits. The French corpses were burned. 10 days after the battle, the visitor reported seeing flames.
Ooh.
Basically, there were like people manning these flame pits, which just had like bandanas over them, just with big forks, just throwing people in. Is bad. It's real gross.
Real gross.
Where was this again?
It's in Belgium.
I guess if you're a Belgian peasant and you've been charged with, I mean, they were burying people from their side, right?
Yeah, so the British and the Germans won. Those were the two main victorious armies there. And so they went through and they got all their guys and buried them. But then all the French that were left, because, Napoleon, he did surrender. So he wasn't around. There weren't any French people around to clean up. So they just had him, they just hired the local people like, hey, you got to do this.
I hope they got paid well.
Right? Probably didn't. Through all of that, I mean, this process would have taken weeks and weeks and weeks. And souvenir hunters were huge. There were three main types of souvenir hunters after these big battles. You had the victorious soldiers themselves would go through, and they'd pick through everything. Then you'd have just the local townspeople who were like cowering in their huts and were like, oh, then when it's finally over, okay, hey, maybe we can go get some like gold and silver or something. I don't know. And then you had professional scavengers who like, Britain and France were at war with each other for 20 years. So there were 20 at this point. So there were like a good 20 years where, and also, in this time, major powers war was constantly happening. All the European powers were constantly killing each other. So there was always like a good battle not too far away if you wanted to get out there and got some good pickings. I have a story about French soldier Jean-Baptiste de Marbeau, who was wounded at the Battle of Waterloo in Poland in 1807. And I'm just going to read a little passage of his experience being basically knocked unconscious and then coming to as people were scavenging the battlefield.
Ooh.
I'm not going to do a French accent.
Come on. No.
You don't want that. Anyway. Stretched on the snow among the piles of dead and dying, unable to move in any way, I gradually and without pain lost consciousness. I judged that my swoon lasted 4 hours. When I came to my sense, I found myself in this horrible position. I was completely naked, having nothing on but my hat and my right boot. A man of the transport corps, thinking me dead, had stripped me in the usual fashion, and wishing to pull off the only boot that remained, was dragging me by one leg with his foot against my body.
This is how he woke up?
Woke up to this man, he woke up naked with a boot and a hat on, and the guy trying to take his last boot.
Oh my God.
Good morning.
Morning. The jerk with which the man gave me, no doubt, had restored my senses. I succeeded in sitting up and spitting out the clots of blood from my throat. The shock caused by the wind of the ball had produced such an extravasation of blood that my face, shoulders, and chest were black, while the rest of my body was stained red by the blood from my wound. My hat and my hair were full of blood-stained snow, and as I rolled my haggard eyes, I must have been horrible to see. Anyhow, the transport man looked the other way and went off with my property, without being able to say a single word to him, so utterly prostrate was I.
Oh my Lord. What a way to come to. I mean, first you're glad you're alive, and then you're like, oh fuck, I'm naked, and this guy is taking my boot.
Like, it's crazy. Like, he ended up being all right because we know about this, but apparently that was a very common thing, is that the scavengers in the course of scavenging would take every single fallen soldier and strip them naked. Take everything from, because, this is right at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, where clothes are hard to come by, leather's hard to come by, and so all of that, every last bit of clothing was super valuable.
Sure.
And so you just come upon fields of tens of thousands of people, naked, dead, and bones. So that's a creepy thing.
Very
Yeah.
creepy. Do not like.
You wanna talk teeth?
Yeah.
I do.
So one of the big things, and this is, we're talking specifically Waterloo here, is people would come from London and Britain itself after Waterloo to scavenge teeth.
Oh.
Like
Yes.
gold teeth?
I'm talking all teeth.
Ugh.
All teeth all the time.
At this point, dentures were bad and teeth were bad. To make a good set of dentures, what they would do would take elephant or some kind of ivory from an animal, and then a dentist would have to carve the shape of a tooth from that. So why do that when there's perfectly good teeth sitting in the mouths of 50,000 freshly dead, fairly young, healthy mouths?
Oh my
it
God.
makes a lot of sense, though.
Right? So teeth scavengers traveled from Great Britain for the sole purpose of pulling teeth. They pulled so many teeth that they shipped it back in barrels.
Barrel of teeth is the
Barrel
worst phrase
of-
I've ever heard.
That is super, super gross.
This source is the British Journal of Dentistry.
Hey, our friends.
That was the one you didn't want to give away.
Yeah. So they'd ship them over, and specifically, it was interesting, they would ship them over and then they would boil them. They'd boil the teeth to sterilize,
Of course.
and then a dentist would sort through the barrel and fashion together a set of teeth from this bucket. Interestingly, they didn't use molars because they were hard to pull out, and they were also hard to fashion into dentures because they didn't have a great knack at like doing those back teeth.
Okay.
Such was the construction. The teeth were then riveted into hippo or walrus ivory bases, and some of them were like really good and like maybe took like 6 weeks to make. So jewelers and dentists and craftsmen were doing this work. In 1782, Martin van Buchel of London advertised a full set of ivory dentures with human teeth for £100.
Okay.
That's probably pretty expensive back then.
Yeah, that's a nice chunk of change.
I didn't look up how much. I was going to look up how much that is in real dollars.
In 2020, that's $22,686 USD.
So this whole event of all of these teeth being pulled was a huge boon to the British dental industry, and they were called Waterloo teeth.
Oh my God. So it wasn't a secret.
Oh no, it wasn't a secret. You knew when you were getting your Victorian self with your gross mouth go to the jeweler and say, I need a new set of teeth. You knew damn well those were from all those people who got killed down in Waterloo.
That's insane. To think of having a dead person's teeth in your mouth. Ah!
It was great because there was a big shortage and there wasn't any more after the battle.
Yeah, seriously.
Waste not, want not, I guess.
Yes.
I guess.
And as an addendum, I have one other interesting thing that they did with the bodies. I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, here's my final on-brand bones fact. So they did the scavenging for all the clothes and stuff. They did the teeth. After a year after the Battle of Waterloo was over, there were still bones littering the field. So somebody thought, I'm going to contract a company to go and scoop up all those bones. We're going to ship them to Britain, and then we're going to give them to what I think is the worst European football team name ever, the Yorkshire Bone Grinders.
Go
What?
bone grinders.
Go find bone grinders, where they were sold. So where they ground up the bones and then sold it as fertilizer.
To like benefit the team? Or like, why?
No, that was a goof, Katelyn.
That was not a good. The Yorkshire Bone Grinders are not a real football team. However,
Damn it.
much they should be.
Wow, you got me. I was sold.
Yeah, so they took the bones of those dead people and they used them to fertilize the fields of Great Britain.
I see.
Well, I guess it's the circle of life.
This was an intense subject.
Really cool though. The teeth stuff is hard for me to digest.
That's so fascinating because I wonder if they have ever found, I mean, I bet they have a bunch of these denture sets now, like in museums and stuff.
Oh yeah, there are pictures of Waterloo teeth sets.
We're gonna put that on the Instagram for sure.
Go ahead and put that on the Instagram. That'll get you a couple followers right there.
Oh yeah, everybody's hot for used teeth.
I have a quick question about the Waterloo teeth because I really can't get it out of my mind. Do you think that they were kind of one size fits all with their dentures, or did somebody come in and be like, here, look at my mouth, look at my teeth? Was there customization going on, or were you just going in there like, yep, I'll take those teeth on the left, thank you?
I got to imagine, especially for the wealthier people, they're probably going to jewelers and being like, going up to them, be like, here's my mouth. They open their mouth. And then the jeweler goes in with a ruler and is like, yep, okay, yep, uh-huh. Because like, I think at this point, there were so many teeth. How many teeth in a person? 30 something?
32, I think.
32? 32 times 50,000? It's a lot of teeth. Minus molars, though. I'm not a mathematician. I'm a bonematician. But yeah, I think there was definitely a craftsmanship and an art to denture making at this point. So they probably did them specifically for your mouth.
I mean, I had braces, so I feel like I can relate. Just kidding.
It's the same thing.
It's the old thing of like people said George Washington had wooden teeth, but he didn't. He had people teeth.
He could have had Waterloo teeth.
It was the teeth of his slaves.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's worse.
So did you listen to the Very Presidential with Ashley Flowers about George Washington?
Oh, fuck yeah, I did.
This is a great, Ashley Flowers, everything she does, I like. She's a great podcaster, but this one, she was doing a Very Presidential with Ashley Flowers, was just about different presidents. And the last one was about George Washington. And she talked about his wooden teeth actually being slave teeth that they would pull probably from live people, which is just, so awful.
Yeah, at least they were dead.
That was the thing that came up a lot, was that where they mostly got teeth at this time from, cadavers, people, are sort of not I was gonna say, it's not Hobbs and Shaw. Who were the guys that dug up the people?
Oh, Burke and Hare.
Burke and Hare,
Hobbs and Shaw.
The Hobbs and Shaw of their day. You'd have like that people, and then you'd also have like poor and destitute people selling their teeth. No anesthetic. So Waterloo really drove down the price of those people. So a lot of poor people didn't have to sell their teeth for probably a good couple of years.
I hope they were the ones who went and got the teeth and they weren't driven out of business.
In a sad, awful way, it hurt the poor of London even more. So that is the story of the Waterloo Dead.
Thank you for
Nick.
telling us. Yeah, that was fascinating. That's something that I feel like I've never thought about or never knew the answer to, what happened to large numbers of dead in war.
Oh yeah, there's, like I said, there's a lot written on Roman and Greek stuff, and also a lot since, but I think this is just some brutal, awful, interesting history.
Definitely. Well, you have provided me a perfect bridge to my topic, unbeknownst to you. I'm going to pop you over a quick pick of what I'm going to be talking about. And I would love for Nick, for you to be the first one to guess what you think that it is.
Okay, this is there. Let's see here. Taking a look at this, it looks like a patent
Mm-hmm.
or so there's a person in a coffin, and there's some sort of contraption that looks to be gunpowder actuated with some balls. And oh, you know what? I think I know what this is.
Do you want to say it if you think you know?
Sure. I think, is this a mechanism to alert people if you were alive in your coffin with some like gunpowder actuated alarm?
You are extremely close. We are going to be talking about coffin torpedoes and grave guns.
Oh, yeah.
Take me there, Sophie.
So I chose this topic, first of all, because Nick is not only a woodworker, but also a tinkerer of all sorts. So I thought that he would particularly appreciate this piece of American ingenuity. So Nick's subject perfectly kind of slots in with mine, because this also grave robbing for profit, kind of also grave robbing for medical use.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Where we are, set the scene. It's the mid-1800s. We've gotten past the Civil War here in America, and the profession of doctor is booming, and medical schools are opening up all over the country to teach medicine to young doctors. And one of the primary focuses of medicine in this time was the study of anatomy. But the big problem with having to study anatomy is that in this time, the way to learn was by doing, right? So in order to study the body, you have to have bodies to examine, right? And in this time, by law, the only people that could be dissected were executed criminals and sometimes indigent dead, people who were unclaimed dead. So the business of grave robbing, body snatching, we mentioned Burke and Hare earlier, which were famous for actually murdering people for their corpses to sell to medical schools. This is, I think, a little less prolific in the States, but grave robbing is hopping in the mid and late 1800s. And one of the places that it's most popping off is in Ohio.
Oh.
Nice.
Yeah. Everybody loves Ohio. I'm just going to say my sources really quickly. I have an article from 99% Invisible, Atlas Obscura, Wikipedia, and then WOSU Radio. Okay, grave robbing. One of the most prolific events of grave robbing, and Ohio grave robbing specifically, was that of John Scott Harrison. He was a former Ohio congressman and the youngest son of U.S. President William Henry Harrison.
Oh.
And so he died of heart problems in May of 1878. And to protect his body, because grave robbing was a known thing at the time.
I mean, it's Ohio.
It's Ohio. But to protect him, they entombed him in a metal coffin surrounded by marble slabs, and they had an armed guard stand watch. A couple days later, they realize Harrison's body is gone. It's been stolen.
What?
Yes.
You had one job.
You had one job. Make sure they don't take the president's youngest son. The next day, in a search for a completely different body, they go to the Medical College of Ohio in Cincinnati, and they connect with a janitor who leads them down a strange hallway, and they notice this rope hanging down a shaft, and they pull on the rope, and it's Harrison.
He's just in the basement?
Full in case of Harrison.
Yeah, it says in a shaft, which I'm picturing as like, I know that this is not correct for the time, but I'm picturing, like a ceiling vent. Like there's just a rope. They're like, what's this? They pull it down and they're like, nutsack.
Oh, Harry.
Oh, we found Harry. This incident becomes known as the Harrison Horror.
It sounds like a spooky time.
It was a spooky time because at least 12 other body snatching scandals were reported in 1878. And this includes the whole Harrison horror. And during this time as well, there was a lot of grave robbing happening in Worthington, Ohio, for the Worthington College of Medicine, run by Dr. Thomas Moreau. Moreau was a teaching physician, and he often would get the bodies of the poor to dissect, and his community really didn't like that. So an angry mob formed and went to disband the college by force.
Ooh.
I'm imagining this sort of relationship as like the college professor and like the angry cops, and they're just sort of like chasing each other around a graveyard all the time, and he gets away with the body and they shake their fists.
From what I can tell, the cops kind of didn't give a shit. I'm kind of getting to this. There were several of these riots about medical schools in Ohio. There was one in 1811, one in 1845, one in 1847, and one in 1852. But there still weren't any laws in place for medical schools to get bodies legally. You know, Harrison's abduction really incited like a nationwide outcry over grave robbing, and there was a lot of backlash for medical schools, i.e. riot. And it kind of got the message out to the rich and like the fancy highfalutin people that even you can have your body snatched. It's not just poor people. You also are in danger of getting your body snatched. And part of the Victorian sensibility was death was extremely important. Having a dignified burial, you would save a lot of your money throughout your life to have a good burial, a good funeral, and to go get grave robbed undoes a lifetime of work, you know?
I've done so good. I've gone to church every day, and I swear to God, if some asshole pulls me out of the ground, it's going to put me straight to hell, probably. I don't know.
Whether or not it reflected poorly on you, it reflected poorly on the governments because there weren't any laws. And so people took to defending themselves from grave robbing on a person-to-person basis. And so kind of taking advantage of that, in America, our great thing is if we see a problem, we're going to solve it first by trying to get people's money and then by blowing it up.
Nice.
Love it.
Enter in grave torpedoes. There was a guy named Philip K. Clover. He was a Columbus, Ohio artist, and he patented an early coffin torpedo in 1878. His is one of the schematics that you're looking at. His instrument functioned like a small shotgun secured inside the coffin lid. What would basically happen is if you tried to remove the body, the torpedo would fire out a lethal blast of lead balls when the lid was opened.
Oh
so
my God.
You go to open this thing up and you just get a shotgun blast, basically, of lead balls straight to the face.
This is the most American thing I've ever heard. How do we solve grave robbing? Guns. It's guns.
It's
guns.
Guns
are always the answer in America.
Blow it up. This is America.
We like elaborate booby traps and guns.
Yeah, so it's funny because these guys are both from Ohio. There was another guy, he was a former Circleville probate judge named Thomas N. Howell, and he patented a grave torpedo that was more like a landmine. This was in 1881.
Now we're talking.
It was basically a shell that was buried above the coffin and then wired to it. It basically worked like a landmine when the thieves would go to detonate. And I have a little quote from an article, I think it's an Ohio radio station, the WOSU, but they had an interview with this guy, Bucky Cartwright, a guide with the Columbus Ghost Tours.
Bucky, what you got for me?
Bucky's got all the info. I love Bucky. He says, quote, how to describe it? It would be a almost like fishing line wire that would go across the chest and either side of the head, neck, or the armpit. There would be a small barrel that would ignite when you ripped the body or coffin open.
So the people that are using these coffins would rather get their dead body blown up than have a doctor even think about dissecting them for science.
I mean, basically.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure if it would blow up the body itself. I'm guessing it would, depending on how much gunpowder or whatever explosive you were using. There was also a device called the cemetery gun, which was locked and loaded at the foot of a grave. And this device was essentially a regular gun on a swiveling base. And it was also triggered by tripwires and would spin and shoot the would-be robbers. And kind of the problem with this was that you couldn't really control it, but it was cool because people didn't have to buy them. They were kind of only a temporary device. You just had to wait until your body was unusable. So
Right.
people would rent them rather than buy them.
Very, very good. That is good strategy right there.
That is some good business. And then I'm just waiting for the like tripwire just on like next to the gravestone, and you just got the groundskeeper walking by and blows the whole thing up.
Sets off 12 guns, all spinning in a circle, just shooting.
Yeah, so what happens is, so you got Howell's torpedo, which sounds like a bomb. So a grave robber goes to do that, which sets off all the grave torpedoes around, and so you just have a chain reaction and the entire cemetery blows up.
It's just a crater by the end of the day.
Well, the funniest part about all of this is that a lot of these devices were kind of focusing in on the opening of the lid or the coming in from the top. That's not how it was done. Grave robbing was normally by your good professional resurrection men, which is what they were called sometimes. What you would do is you would dig behind the gravestone, like behind the headstone. You dig down till you reach the top of the coffin, like where like the top of your head would be. And you knock out, with a hammer or with something, you knock out the top of that coffin. And take a rope, tie it around the guy, like around his waist or shoulders, and you yank him out that way. So you have not disturbed the top of the coffin or the top of the grave. So these devices don't do anything.
Shoot.
It's got guns. It's a grift at its fundamental level because it doesn't actually address the issue. God bless America.
God bless America. You want to hear a little bit about people who may have used them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was an incident on January 17th of 1881 where there was a failed grave robbing in Knox County near Mount Vernon. And there was an explosion that killed a grave robber named Dipper and injured another. The third member of their party managed to survive and helped the other guy escape. But this was said to be less of a coffin torpedo and more of like a Home Alone style booby trap. There were a lot of stories in different papers. Like in 1899, there was an issue of the Topeka State Journal that said that the late Mrs. W.C. Whitney's grave was sown with powerful torpedoes. That's a quote. Sown with powerful torpedoes and fiercely guarded by watchmen at all hours. So she's not getting grave robbed. No fucking way.
She'd rather be torpedoed than be robbed.
Exactly.
My children will be destitute, but my body will be intact.
God damn it, I'm spending every penny I have. There was also mention of the testing of one of these, quote, one of the Patton, Ohio grave torpedoes. They were testing it on a mule, and apparently when it went off, the mule picked up a single hoof and continued grazing. He was fine. It didn't do shit. So there were like a lot of sensational stories about it in the news, but there's not a lot of archaeological evidence to support them actually being used on any sort of mass. They were probably extremely rare. There's a quote from an Atlas Obscura article that I used for information that says, quote, "For the most part, these devices seem to be used very little," says anthropologist Dr. Kate Mayers-Emery. Quote, "They were definitely oddities designed to make money off the widespread fear about body snatching. The truth is, most of the time you really just needed someone to watch over your grave for a few days or weeks to make sure the body had time to decay and wouldn't be of any use." So you can save yourself a buttload of money by just watching over your friend's grave.
Or we could save ourselves a lot of time by just making a path towards cadavers to be given to scientists.
No, more bombs in the ground.
I'm sorry.
As long as you're not getting the guard that was supposed to take care of the president's dead son, who really, really biffed it.
Oh, he biffed it hardcore. And I mean, there were other ways that the mortuary industry was working on trying to prevent grave robbing. There was burial in sealed shipping crates that were used as like DIY vaults. There was hidden locking mechanisms on caskets, cast iron coffins, as well as mort safes, which you are probably familiar with. If you picture have you ever seen those graves with like a big metal cage on top? You know what I'm talking about?
Ooh.
Mort safe, M-O-R-T.
Yeah, mort safe.
Oh, okay.
I feel like I've heard that like some of the legends were around people not becoming as vampires, but honestly it was to prevent grave robbing.
Okay. Yeah, I know what this is. All right.
Around 1913, anatomy laws gave medical schools access to bodies for volunteer body donation. So that really slowed down the prevalence of grave robbing significantly. Also, other areas of medicine came into vogue around this time. Microbiology, more like surgical advancements, and early x-rays. So kind of the spotlight on anatomy kind of shifted, which also helped to curtail grave robbing.
By 1913, we didn't need to have a skeleton to know what a bone looked like.
It's true. Old 1913 time, I knew what a bone looked like, knew what the veins are.
I declare this day, July 7th, 1913, the day the medical community has figured out bones.
And what a day that was.
Take your tape parade.
I just want to close things out with this quote from historian Michael Sapol. And this is really what got me to do this because it made me think of Nick. Quote, "Then there's the tinkerer's culture. People making goofy devices for perceived need or non-need. There's a premium on novelty and ingenuity. People in their barns have their tools and they're making stuff. Sometimes they make brilliant inventions and make fortunes, and sometimes they just make stupid things."
Nice.
Oh, that's beautiful. I can't wait to make my own coffin torpedo to keep my housemate Darren out of my pantry.
I was going to ask you guys if you had to create an anti-grave robbing device, what would it be?
What would it be?
I think I'd like mine to be some kind of like gas. Like if they get too close or they trip the wire, they get some kind of toxic, or maybe not toxic, but some kind, like maybe they start gagging on this. I don't know. I want gas in mine.
Okay, Katelyn's got gas.
I'm imagining sort of like, so the grave robber, they get down, they open up the coffin that trips a tripwire, which there's a little compressed air canister within my skull that blows out a party blower out of my mouth, goes, and then there's a timer. 10 seconds later, 20 pounds of explosive.
Well, I am not going to fuck with your dead body.
No, you can keep all your parts, Nick.
Oh, thanks, you guys. That means a lot.
I would probably do something like Mousetrap style, the board game, where if they trip, because all of these have trip wires, right? That's part of it. If you trip the wire, a large cage comes down and lands on you.
Perfect.
And drops a little piece of cheese in there.
Yeah, just for a snack.
For a snack until the police arrive.
Mm-hmm. And take you to grave jail.
Gonna put you in a mort safe.
Hey, that would probably be terrifying.
Ooh.
Well, Nick, thanks for coming on Anything Bones.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for letting me talk to you about these awful, terrible events on the fields of Europe.
I enjoyed it. Just before we go, I must ask, what's your favorite bone, Nick?
Oh, what's my favorite bone? Is it? I mean, I'm a comedian. I feel like it's cliche to say the funny bone. Also, I don't have a full understanding of where it is. I'm gonna go ahead and say that skull.
Yeah, that's always my
Classic.
go-to answer.
It's a classic.
It's a classic. You need that. You need that.
You need skull.
I agree.
Well, thanks again for being on our show. And thank you guys out there for listening to Anything Bones. If you're enjoying our show, tell a friend about it. Or maybe pop over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a little review.
Yeah, that'd be really cool, but no pressure because we're cool here.
We're super cool here.
Guys, the I don't know if your listeners you can tell, but the vibes here are very chill. So like, don't worry about it.
I've melted into a puddle. I'm so unbelievably chill.
It's concerning, but chill.
Well, Nick, thank you again. Sophie, I'll just say it again. Bon voyage.
Bon voyage.
Thanks for listening to Anything Bones. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Anything Bones Podcast, or email us at anythingbonespodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to Nick Kruger for our spooky music and Stephen Vetteroff
At Chubby Scrubby on Twitter.
for our jazzy vocals, and thank you to Camilla Franklin
At Camilla Strader on Instagram.
for our beautiful bony artwork. Please rate, review, and subscribe.
Bones!